This may come as a bit of a surprise to you, but as Messianic followers, our foundation is not in the belief that there actually is a God. So many people turn and say, well, I believe there's a God. I believe in God. And it's like, that's not our foundation. Many religions proclaim that. And when they say, I believe in God, your first question should be, which one? They try and fool you into thinking, oh, we're all talking about the same one. No, they're not. Unless he's the God of Israel, the God of Yitzhak, Yaakov and Abraham, then we're talking about a different God. We're talking about a different entity that is nothing. So many religions proclaim that. Our foundation is our covenant relationship with the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzhak and Yaakov. Yahweh Elohim of Israel. That is our foundation. And it's signed, sealed and delivered with a ketubah. I've talked about a ketubah before, a certificate of betrothal that was issued by Yahweh at Mount Sinai thousands of years ago. And if you've seen a Jewish wedding and looked at a ketubah, the ketubah sets out all of the conditions, the promises of what will happen leading up to the marriage, what will happen during the marriage, what will happen if anything happens. All of the terms and conditions are in there. This is my ketubah. It was written by Yahweh at Mount Sinai, and it was endorsed by Yeshua. That's the ketubah. We are in a state of betrothal. The future bride was chosen, Israel. And since that time, this particular chosen group has grown considerably, just as was promised. And the extended family now includes many who have chosen and been chosen to bind themselves to the original recipients of this covenant. And the only way to be a part of it is to accept the terms of the covenant. To accept all of its terms and conditions as set out by the one who initiated it. And has added amendments to it as an everlasting ongoing agreement. There are various amendments, like I said last week, just like the American Constitution has a constitution, but there are amendments, but they're still part of the Constitution. There are amendments to the covenant, but it's the same covenant, and it's been added to. Did Noah's covenant disappear when he stepped off the boat? Not what it says. What about all the other covenants? What about Abraham? Did Abraham initiate the covenant? No, he put him to sleep. It was like, I don't want any interruptions. You go to sleep and I'll sort out the covenant. I think he does that with us sometimes. Makes an agreement with us and puts us to sleep while he puts it in place. They're his conditions. It's his covenant. He added the amendments as an everlasting, ongoing agreement. In the Tanakh, or the Old Testament, the first half of a complete, seamless Torah. All of this is Torah. I know some people get upset and they say, oh no, it's just the first 5 books. Torah is the written word, the living word. It's all of it. It's all spoken word by Yahweh. Every word that Yeshua spoke was Torah. Not the law. Teaching. In there, the word Berith, or covenant, is used 14 times to establish and confirm several everlasting promises made by Yahweh. The main covenants being Noach's, which was sealed with a rainbow. He said, I'll put my bow in the sky. Abraham's, which was sealed with circumcision or Brit Milah. Moshe's was sealed with a ketubah. And part of that ketubah incorporates the 4th commandment, which regarding Shabbat. People say, I keep all the 10 Commandments. Well, do you keep Shabbat? Then they don't keep all 10 Commandments if they don't. David's covenant was sealed with an eternally occupied throne, which Yeshua now occupies. He said, you will never lack for a person to sit on my throne. Did you notice that Yosef was called the son of David? Just as Yeshua is called Ben David, son of David. Now it's Yeshua's throne, and that's sealed with the gift of eternal redemption. Each of them follow on and build onto the previous one, and build on the same foundation, and fully confirm the existing conditions and promises made. Yeshua said, I don't come to change a thing. Not to change a thing, not to cancel anything, not to change anything, but to fulfill it. At Mount Sinai, Yahweh issued his ketubah and a national constitution. This isn't just a ketubah. This was when Israel became a nation and he issued the Israeli constitution. This is their constitution. It's all of the things that they need to do and to not do, and what they should do and what they shouldn't do. It's all outlined in here. This is their constitution. New Zealand doesn't have a constitution. How many people knew that? We've got laws and legislation and stuff like that, but New Zealand doesn't have a constitution. So when he issued the national constitution, signifying the next step from a promise to a full betrothal for Israel, he had promised to be their God, and he issued a ketubah, which is the full betrothal. This kiddushin, or betrothal, has exactly the same binding effect on both parties, including a ring as a symbol of agreement, just the same as the nisuin, the marriage. The difference between the betrothal and the marriage is that it hasn't been consummated yet. And you notice in there that Yosef was betrothed, so he had all the same obligations as if he was married, except for consummation. That comes after the nisuin. So the nisuin for him occurred after Yeshua was born. Until Yeshua was born, they were betrothed. The ketubah is read out. The ketubah is always read out, so everybody is a witness to what's contained in the ketubah. In our case, our ketubah is the 10 words. And built into that, there's an agreed time to get to know one another, or bond, as the betrothed bride prepares herself, and the groom prepares and builds a house in his father's compound. Once the agreement, or the chesed is the terms of the ketubah. Once it's been entered into, it is definite and binding upon both groom and bride, who were considered as man and wife in all legal and religious aspects, except the act of actual cohabitation. So at the moment, where are we? We're betrothed. And it's a binding covenant until the bridegroom returns to celebrate the Nisuin feast at Sukkot and consummates the union. So we're betrothed and we're looking forward to the marriage supper? No. We don't do suppers, I'm sorry. That's cheese and biscuits. This is a Jewish feast. This is a Jewish festival. And believe me, there'll be a lot more than cheese and crackers at it. That's why none of us are particularly thin. We have lots of feasts. Every Friday for a start. Remember, a future bride is always chosen. Doesn't just happen. The bride has to be chosen. Even if it's an arranged marriage, the bride still has to be chosen. Just as Israel has been chosen. And once the bride has been chosen and the betrothal is in place, it never can or will be replaced. If Israel is betrothed, you can't just nick in another bride and say, hang on a minute, no, you don't count, you've been naughty. You get out of the way and we'll put a Gentile bride in. And we'll call her the church. It doesn't work that way. The betrothed is the betrothed. Never has, never will be replaced. Why would you send a Jew, Yeshua, to replace Israel? Doesn't make sense. If you're going to replace Israel, send a Gentile. And not only that, Israel was his betrothed. Why would he replace it with a Gentile institution called the church and then train 12 other Jews to make Talmudim of people other than Jews? Doesn't make sense. It's not logical. And then choose another Jew, Rabbi Shaul, to go and reach the Gentiles. And Jews alike. Given the replacement theology that's around, none of it makes any sense. Yosef, the father of Yeshua, was betrothed to Miriam. But they were not yet Nisuin, they were not married. And that is why he had a problem with her being pregnant. Because as betrothed, your betrothed partner shouldn't be pregnant. But I love the fact that his concern was not for his reputation, but for her reputation. That's why he considered putting her aside. Not for his reputation, but for her reputation. That to me tells me where his heart was. That's why he had a problem, because there was no consummation possible until the Nisuin ceremony. As he did afterwards. And produced Yeshua's brothers. People forget sometimes that Yeshua wasn't an only son. He wasn't an only child. He was brought up in a very robust Hebrew home with brothers, and I'm sure he had some fun with them and they had fun with him. And I mean, these guys were builders. They weren't academics. Builders tend to be a bit rough with each other. He wasn't a carpenter. He didn't sit there and carve a little coffee table. In those days, what they call a carpenter, he was a builder. He was a master builder. However, as a righteous man, he did consider breaking the betrothal quietly so as not to publicly humiliate Miriam. But like a lot of us, in the middle of the night, he had a word. Just a gentle little word in his ear from Yahweh. And what was amazing was that people missed the fact. They talk about Miriam being the favoured mother and all the other stuff that goes with it. But this was him being appointed to raise the Messiah. This wasn't just some dream in the middle of the night. He was being appointed to raise the Messiah. He was being appointed to raise Yeshua. That's an incredible responsibility. And Yahweh wouldn't have given that kind of appointment to just anybody. He obviously had an incredible character. It's interesting, it said, as a righteous man. He was considered a righteous man. So he had a word from Yahweh appointing him to raise his own son, Emmanuel, Elohim with us. What a perfect choice. An obedient promised woman and an obedient man to bring up a child who was the fulfillment of the promised covenant within a covenant of marriage. When Boaz redeemed Naomi and Ruth, he honoured a covenant. It was a covenant agreement as kinsman redeemer to care for and protect family. And this is the prophecy, this is the part that talks about what Yahweh is going to do later on with Yeshua. He was our kinsman redeemer. But what he did was exactly the same as Boaz did. One was from his own tribe, but the other was a Gentile. And yet both were chosen, and one of them, the Gentile Ruth, became Kiddushin, or betrothed, and then Nisuin, or married, or consummated, fulfilling prophecy to confirm a future redemption and restoration through our own kinsman, Yeshua. So what he did, he took a Gentile and a Jew, and he brought them together. He formed the covenant that Yeshua would ratify, bringing Jew and Gentile together. Yeshua was the product of a Jew and a Gentile. It was always meant to be that way. It also made Yeshua eligible to physically inherit King David's throne forever as promised. So not only is he the King of Kings, but he's also the King of Israel, legally. Through Yosef and also through Miriam. When we enter into a covenant relationship freely with the one who has chosen us, Yahweh, we achieve the status of Kiddushin, betrothed. And when that happens, we're expected to prepare, to spend time getting to know him mentally, emotionally, and above all spiritually, and to bond with him in preparation for the consummation spiritually at the end of time. But because current society is absolutely obsessed with the physical side of marriage and the feelings-based romantic aspects, men in particular find the whole concept of being married to Yahweh strange and struggle to relate to all the romance and all the stuff that's talked about. But it's because they need to take it out of that concept. It's not about physical aspects. It's about being bonded together with him as one. And a lot of them struggle to relate, so we need to communicate the concept in a better way. It's a spiritual relationship. There are no male or female connotations whatsoever. So, there are only 3 options to choose regarding the so-called New Covenant. 1, it's an extension of the others. 2, it's an addition to the others. And 3, it's a replacement of the others. If you chose 1, you get the prize. It's an extension of the others. It's not a replacement, and it's not an addition. 2 and 3 are used as foundations for supersessionism or replacement theology, which is claimed by most denominations in one form or another as the foundation of their individual and corporate relationships with God. Another name for replacement theology, supersessionism. In other words, Israel's been bad They're out of the way. They've been replaced with the new bride. No. It's also the foundation for their lack of any relationship with Israel. Because apparently we've inherited all the curses and they've inherited all the blessings. What a nice theology, even if it is completely wrong. Whatever glasses they use when they're reading selective scripture, they must be about 12 feet thick and lined with lead. How else would you miss the plain as the nose on your face, the promises and prophecies regarding the present and future Israel? Instead of replacement theology, a little more replacement neology might improve the accuracy of their doctrine and their long-term vision. They need to go for a health check. They should have gone to Specsavers. Messianic Jews or Hebrews in the Torah is absolutely clear in chapter 8 verse 6, where it says that covenant is given as Torah. You don't enact covenant, you don't legislate it as law. And then in verse 6, the renewed or new covenant is with the house of Israel and the house of Yehudah. And it's all about putting the Torah into their minds and onto the 2 tablets of their heart, as he promises. When he says, I will be their Elohim, and they will be my people. And I will be merciful towards their wickedness, and remember their sins no more. So when will all this happen? At the end of time. Not now, but then. And only then will the old vanish. How many symbols of covenant are seen in the New Jerusalem when it comes down in Revelation? 1. The Ark of the Covenant. It's the symbol of Yahweh's presence with who? Israel. Same Ark, same covenant, same people. And it's coming back to where? Jerusalem. Not Rome, not Washington, not London, not Tehran, not Baghdad, not Brussels, not Cairo, not Gaza. So maybe it's time for people to check their copy of the covenant, all of them, and check out the terms, promises, obligations and expectations, and then prepare yourself and let Abba dress you ready for the Nisuin ceremony and the feast that follows it, so that you do not miss out on the final shofar call to assemble that will signal the groom's return. See you there. And just out of interest, if you suddenly found out you'd inherited $40 million and they gave you this stack of paper about that thick and said, this is the agreement, these are the clauses for claiming it and keeping it and what to do with it and everything else, do you think you'd read it? From cover to cover? Make sure every single thing of it is fully understood so you can inherit the 40 million. Isn't it more important to understand the covenants? Isn't it more important to understand the things on offer, the claims, the inheritances? It's worth far more than that. Your life depends on it. So shalom kiddushin, or betrothed. Shalom.